Welcome to SelfCare Sound Mind, a podcast where I talk all things mental health and self-care. Tonight, we are going to be discussing trauma with the trauma expert herself, Mrs. Natasha Mullen. Natasha is a licensed professional counselor and owns Milestone Consultants, LLC. Hey, everybody, and welcome to this second episode of the second season of SelfCare Sound Mind, the podcast and live series. While this is a pre-recorded show, I will be able to interact with you live in the comments on the Facebook and YouTube page. Welcome again to SelfCare Sound Mind, the podcast and live series. I am so excited about today's episode in talking about trauma. But before we get into that, of course, I have a few announcements. So I want to remind you, I forgot to mention it on the last episode. We are constantly and consistently and will forever be raising funds for our free therapy campaign. For those of you who are new to the podcast, Embracing Oak Therapy, the goal is to provide affordable and free mental health care to those who can't afford it. So for people who are unemployed or who have private insurance and they can't afford their deductible or their copays, our goal is to have funds available to help with that cost. And we can't do it without your support. So please go to embracingoak.com and click on the free therapy tab to donate today. You can also purchase a t-shirt to go directly towards our free therapy campaign. And that can also be purchased on embracingoak.com. And if you missed last week, you might have missed my special announcement. So I'm going to share it with you again. Sis, so you're starting to take care of yourself and implementing self-care? I'm so proud of you. What a great first step. Let's kick it up a notch and elevate your self-care. Join my circle. The SelfCare Sound Mind Circle is a paid membership that includes exclusive inspirational content, events, coaching, goal setting, and of course, self-care. Prioritize and invest in your self-care. You won't regret it. When working with me, you can expect to be challenged, encouraged, and empowered. Go to kieratimore.com and sign up and subscribe to my circle today. So I'm so excited about my Self-Care Sound Mind Circle. For all of you who have had to tell time and time again that we can't work together because it's unethical, you can, however, join my circle and we can do the self-care, the goal setting, and all of that kind of stuff together. I have so many wonderful things in store. And this group is to help you with not only accountability, but also making yourself a priority. Okay. Again, if you are just joining us, welcome to Self-Care Sound Mind, the podcast and live series, where my goal is to uplift, encourage, and empower. Every 2 weeks for this season, we will be joined with a special guest to discuss mental health and self-care and topics that illuminate those things. Tonight, I'm so excited. I keep calling her the trauma expert. She's probably like, what in the world? But she just has so much experience and she's just such a wealth of knowledge. And I'm so glad that our paths have crossed. I don't even know how long ago, but during the pandemic at some point. I've heard her name many, many times. And I'm so glad that our paths were able to cross. This is Natasha Mullen. Her practice is Milestone Consultants, LLC. And let's welcome her to the show. Hi.
Hello, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing good. It's a Monday, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Even this is going to be airing on Friday. It's been Monday of all Mondays, let me tell you.
Yeah, when they watch this on Friday, they're going to be like, oh, yeah, it's Friday.
Today is Monday, and it has been the Mondayest Monday for me.
Oh, wow.
But that's okay, because that's where resiliency kicks in.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We're moving. So welcome to Self-Care Sound Mind. I'm so excited to have you on here. I really appreciate you joining the show. My goal is to just really shed light on mental health topics, on self-care, and
Mhm.
ways that we can encourage others to take care of themselves. Like, obviously, in our practices, we have our caseloads and we're reaching one person at a time. But I love this platform in that it can be shared. I checked my statistics not too long ago, and I've had a couple people from other countries pick up the podcast and listen
Oh
to the episodes.
wow.
So, I mean, it's like, one here and there, but that's still great. So you never know who is listening. And so I'm super excited about today. Can you give us a little bit of your background, who you are, what you do, and why you're
Okay.
so amazing?
So I worked for an agency for about 17 years, working with children. And I decided to start my private practice about 5 years ago. And so I've been working with counseling probably over 20 years now.
Wow.
My experience really comes in with trauma, like you had stated, depression and anxiety. But I work with people with a number of different, different struggles. I
Mhm.
also do a lot of supervision with clinicians, mental, master level, as well as interns. I've been doing that probably for the last 15 years. I have a mentoring group called Impact that me and my husband do. And we have two youth mentoring programs, Man Up Unique, and a parenting program called Grown Folks Talking. And so we've been doing that since 2004. So just really wanting to help people, educate and empower, like you said,
Yeah.
people is kind of our passion. And so, yes, it kind of professionally and personally, that's kind of been my passion.
Awesome. That is really great. We'll have to make sure that we put those links in the comment section so people can find out how to join your programs. If Are you accepting new people to your programs, your mentoring?
I am. Yes,
Okay,
I am.
awesome.
Mhm.
We'll have to definitely put that in. And what's the name of your practice? Can you tell us again?
Milestones Consultants is the name of our practice, and Impact Delaware is our nonprofit.
Love it. So
Hmm.
let's get into trauma, right?
Okay.
So trauma, while it is very serious, right? I still feel like there are so many like mental health terms that are becoming more like trendy and buzzwords, and I don't think people are really understanding what they mean in the context
Hmm.
that they use it. Can you just share what is trauma?
Sure. So basically, trauma is when we have an experience that kind of overwhelms our coping skills.
Mm,
And what happens is, how you know it's trauma is when certain things happen, when certain triggers happen, we are like reliving the experience almost as if it is occurring again. It
mm,
could be our thoughts, it could be our body, we feel
yeah.
it could be our feelings, but it's almost like having a wound and somebody just constantly ripping the band-aid off over and over again. And so that's how you know it's trauma. It started, PTSD started with what they call veterans,
Hmm.
and but now they're realizing that there are all types of traumatic experiences, whether it's abuse, domestic violence, anything that can cause severe fear and threaten to life or threaten to someone else's life could
Hmm.
be a traumatic experience, whether it's a hurricane or
Yeah.
a bad car accident or someone died tragically in your family. All of those things represent trauma.
And that I love how you answer that, because that kind of goes into my next question, which is there are a lot of people who are walking around who have experienced traumatic events, and they have no idea that it's that
Hmm.
traumatic event that is making such a huge impact on why they can't progress in life or why they seem to be stuck at a
Hmm.
certain point. And so when you put it in those terms, like, if it's making you go back to that situation, that's a traumatic experience. If you're
Absolutely.
reliving that, if it's keeping you from, going beyond this point in your life, then that most likely is a traumatic event. And there are so many people who have these untreated, even unrecognized traumas. How does or in your experience, can you share what that might look like for a person who has had a traumatic event that's not being treated?
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting because that's kind of what I mainly do with my clients is really teach them to be aware. And
Mm.
so it's so many different responses, which they trigger responses. Some of them are automatic and you kind of know, okay, I know why I did that. But there's some things like overcompensating or people pleasing or
Mm.
um, maybe you have to be to work a certain time, or maybe you're not coming to work at all because of fear and avoidance, or you're laying
Mm.
in bed all day because you just can't get up the energy to meet with someone. So trauma responses look a lot of different ways. I always talk about with my clients these managers that we develop, which are behaviors that sometimes we're aware of and sometimes we're not aware of. But
Okay.
these are direct responses to trying to prevent that traumatic experience. So if I was in a situation so out of control, I may be over controlling in other areas. I may be
Mm. Yeah.
overprotective. I may be over hypervigilant. I hate
Mm.
surprises, because I need to be prepared. I need to plan. I need to be ready. And so there's so many different experiences. But a lot of times it could also be, someone say like, something bothered me, but I feel some type of way. I don't really know what it is. Usually
Mm.
it's because they've been triggered. Or if their response doesn't match what's going on. So I'm having a conversation with you, and then all of a sudden I have this major attitude, and you're
Yeah.
wondering, what's up with her? Usually it means it's something you did. It could be
Okay.
something the way you moved. It could be the way
Mm.
you stood that triggered this response out of me. And so
Yeah.
now my response doesn't match. I always tell my clients they bring a rifle to a water gun fight. It's like
Right.
they're ready. They're
The-
ready for something to happen. They're ready for, and usually that's because of some experience in the past where they felt like they didn't have control or they felt
yeah.
unsafe. And so now you're not going to catch me like that again. I'm going to be
Right.
ready.
Ready for anything. Yeah.
Right, 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 right.
Mm. Okay. Okay. I love that. I love how you describe that. And I'm pretty sure that there's somebody out there like, wow, that explains a lot. It's funny. With my teenage clients, they'll come in and they'll be like having this, these big issues, and I'll kind of like piece the patterns together of like what they're describing and what they've experienced. And they're like, how'd you make that make so much sense? But when you've just been
Right.
doing it for so long, those patterns really start to stick out. And I love that you're teaching your clients how to be aware,
Mm-hmm.
right? How to be aware of their thoughts, their behaviors, their patterns, their responses to things,
Mm-hmm.
because that can really tell a lot about what's going on with you in that moment. What about like physical responses, right? Because our emotions and what our physical body feels are very connected. Um,
Yes.
have you ever experienced any, or can you tell us what some physical symptoms to look out for?
Well, it's interesting because once again, everyone is different,
Mhm.
but it all relates to different types of tension. Whether it could be in your head,
Mm.
like when I'm doing trauma work, that's the first thing we do is we really check in to your body. Where do you notice it when you think about
Mm.
this thing? Like, do you notice it in your shoulders? Some people feel upset in their stomach. Some people get headaches. Some people can feel it like their hands. And so there's so many different body responses, and everyone is different. One of
Mm.
the things that I try to get the community, my clients, my family, everyone to do is to take some time and check in with yourself. Because a lot of times we will go from one thing to the next and we're not realizing how things have affected us. But if
Yes.
we're able to kind of slow down for a moment and really check in with how am I feeling right now? What am I noticing in my body right now? There's
Mhm.
a greater chance that they'll notice that they have been triggered or that
Yes.
something is going on.
Yes. You know what? I want to pause there for a second.
Uh huh.
We've talked about my Drop Your Cape book, right? And so I it's just funny how things just kind of parallel in life, right? So I have a lot of women, I won't say a lot, but I have quite a few women who I work with who are in, pretty intense professions, and they're always on the go, like many of us are, right? Raise your hand if you have a problem.
Right.
so they're always on the go. And so when I finally get them to check in and be aware, right, or to take time off, we have the hardest time getting back into that intense level of functioning, right? It's like I finally got my body to calm down, and now I can adjust back into my normal level of intensity, right? And so one of the things that I tell them is that your body was able to rest, and it's telling you, I don't want to go back to that level of functioning.
Right, absolutely.
That's not healthy for us.
Right, absolutely.
Or they recognize that, something in their life wasn't appropriate, and they've, implemented a healthy boundary, and then like all of a sudden they're like, now everything else in my life is not right. And I'm telling you, when you recognize there's an unhealthy pattern and you address it, and you have that awareness within yourself, you can't help but have that awareness in other situations as well.
Absolutely.
So maybe you came in to address, poor communication with your spouse, but you're going to also notice poor communication with other people in your life.
Absolutely.
And so those things are going to also need to be addressed, because you recognize, I'm not okay with that. And so when it goes back to what you were saying about just being aware, right? Sometimes, people come in for one thing and they don't recognize how many things have been piled up, right? That they've either swept under the rug, or that they've just dealt with, or they just figured it was life. And then when you really check in with yourself, you're like, wait a minute, I'm not okay with that anymore.
Yes. And it's so interesting how it can start, like you said, with one thing. And usually if it's that one thing, especially if you're talking about a trauma response or a trauma interaction, then it usually goes across very different aspects of their life. So it's not just me and my coworkers, me and my mom, or it's me and my sisters, me and my partner. And so it just kind of goes across, because that person triggered me. Now this person also triggers me with this, and then this person always also triggers me with that. And maybe I'm triggered as a parent, and so my children trigger me, or maybe feelings that I'm not good enough, or whatever it is. But it's usually across the board.
Yes. So that's just amazing how that works, and how just having that simple awareness and checking in with your body and realizing, okay, I'm having a response right now. Like I'm not having a normal response to what you just said or what you just did. And I need to check in with myself and figure out, like, okay, what's going on with that?
Right. What just happened there? Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I always say, like, things like, it isn't what it feels like, because your emotions can be so well over your window of tolerance that you're like, what happened there? Like, why did I completely like snap in that moment? Or why did I shut down at dinner and stop talking? And just kind of realizing that you were out of that window, and your body just kind of took care of you, whether it went into fight mode or whether it went into, we're going to shut it down, we're going to clock out. Either way, your body's kind of taking care of you in that moment.
Can you explain a little bit more for the people who don't know what you mean by the window of tolerance? Because I think that's important right there, that message.
So we all have a window of tolerance. It is basically the amount of stress, the amount of frustration and aggravation or whatever that we can tolerate. And when things go above that window of tolerance, we kind of get this kind of almost this out of control type feeling. So if we were above our ability to be able to manage, then we respond. And sometimes it can look like lashing out. It can look like laying in bed for 3 days. It can look like avoiding the job interview, or when things just kind of take us over our ability to cope, we respond. So that's kind of what the window of tolerance is. We were doing trauma work. We're trying to bring up the trauma, but we're trying to keep you in that window.
Yes.
So that you're not too aroused, hyper aroused, or hypo aroused, but try to keep you in that window of being able to tolerate what we're processing.
I like that. And I like that you explain that that's where you want to go when you're working with people with trauma, because I think some people think that if they go, and obviously, you know, we are pro therapy here. So if you go to therapy, I'm just going to be re-traumatized, or I'm just going to have to talk about it over and over again. And I'm trying to just move beyond it. I'm trying to just get past it. I'm trying to forget about it. Right. So what do you say to the person who thinks that they're just going to be re-traumatized?
Well, the thing about it is, our experiences every day play out. So whether you're dealing with it firsthand and you're talking about it, or whether you're dealing with it subconsciously, you're still dealing with it. One of the things about trauma work, it's not like, okay, we're going to talk about this today. You really have to be prepared. We work on resourcing, we work on meditation, we work on how to take care of yourself before session, during session, after session, and they're always in control. Like I always say, we're never going to go there. We're never going to talk about anything unless you're ready. You're always in the driver's seat. You're always in the driver's seat. I think sometimes people think that counseling is, oh, they're going to make me talk about. No, if you don't want to go there, if you just want to work on anger management, if you just want anger management skills, even though I know it came from your trauma, we'll just work on anger management skills. Like you are always in control.
Yes. Yes. I think that's such an important message that everyone should recognize. If you have not been in therapy, or if you have not had that experience, you are in control, right? Because you have to do the work no matter what. So when you are ready, that's when we will follow your lead. But we're not just going to let you out to dry. We are going to go hand in hand with you in the trenches when you're ready, but make sure you're still feeling in control. There might be, you know, some flooding and some thoughts come back because you're bringing things up, but we're there with you, right? And we're going to make sure that once we take you there, or lead you there rather, we're going to lead you back so that you're able to function and do the things that you need to do. So I think it's really important that people recognize that when you go to therapy, you are in the driver's seat. Absolutely. You are the one that is, you know, prompting, or not prompting, but you're the one that's really guiding where you want to go, because you're the one that is going to make the changes. I did have someone kind of like upset with me before, and you know, they were like, well, I just feel like this isn't going anywhere. And I was like, because you keep telling me you're fine. I'm like, every time I ask you what's going on, how are you feeling about these things, you say you're fine. Right. If you say you're fine and I'm prompting you to open up and you keep the door shut, I'm not going to force you.
Right. And we're not magic. We can't predict what's going on inside. We don't know. You know, we can't sit up here and tell you what's going on. Like it has to come from you. One of the analogies I always use about with trauma work is, you're in the driver's seat, but we're going to make sure you have your seatbelt. And your seatbelt is making sure that you have the resources and the support that you need before we take this ride.
I love that.
We're going to make sure that you're safe before we take this ride. But at any time when we need to stop, you're always in control.
Now, you mentioned meditation, and excuse me, can you share maybe a few techniques that you use for whether it's meditation or deep breathing or mindfulness? Like, what are some exercises that you use that maybe people who are considering going to therapy, or who who are working on their trauma actively, but need some tips to help, you know, de-escalate when they're home?
Yeah. So one of the things, real easy one, is notice your normal breathing. Like draw all of your attention to your normal breathing, your normal in and out. Pay attention to your chest rise and deflate. And if your mind wanders, you just bring it back to your normal breathing. Our brain loves the sound of our breath. Sometimes we're so busy.
Yeah.
So that's one. Another one is kind of taking a deep breath through your nose, filling your belly with air like a balloon as you take it in. You can count 7. Hold it for 4. And then you blow it out through your mouth for 7. And push that last little bit of air out until you get all the way to 7.
Love that.
Yeah. Sometimes this, like,
I'm
I
so
do a lot of
funny.
mindfulness. I do a lot of mindfulness, like pick an object around you and just draw all of your attention to that object, the color, the shape, the size. What is it used for? How did it get there? Once again, it's a distraction of your everyday hustle and bustle.
Yes.
It's focus and it's slowing your brain down. You can do mindful walking, mindful eating. I mean, think about mindful driving. How many times we've went from one place to another and not even realize how we got there. And driving and just paying attention to the trees and
Yes.
the houses and the cars and really paying attention and focusing in on that moment. That's what mindfulness is. It's really directing your attention
Yes.
to that particular thing, whether it's breathing or whether it's something externally, but really drawing all your focus.
I love that. And you know what? It's so funny because when you're always on the go, that's literally like the opposite of mindfulness, right? So it's like you're giving these examples, and I'm like, you can't mindfully drive when you're always late and you're trying to get around everybody to get to where you're going. You know, you can't mindfully eat when
Right,
you only schedule yourself 30 seconds to eat. You know what I mean? Like all of
right.
these things require your attention and your effort. And
Mm-hmm.
when you recognize how important they are and you implement them intentionally in your day, like, no, I am going to eat and I am going to enjoy what I'm eating and I'm going to taste what I'm eating. I'm not going to
Absolutely.
inhale it. It's an entirely different experience, right? I'm
Absolutely.
going to enjoy, the drive. I'm going to give myself time so I don't have to feel like I'm rushing. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
have this
Mm-hmm.
sense of urgency the whole way there. And then I have to
Absolutely.
de-escalate when I get there, right?
Right.
So
Absolutely.
but that requires effort.
Absolutely.
The same
Absolutely.
effort that we would have to put in any other situation, right? And when we recognize that it requires our attention, it requires our focus, I think
Mm-hmm.
that's another, really healthy reminder of we got to slow it down.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Trauma,
Absolutely.
we have to slow
Absolutely.
it down because listen, it's already getting dark faster. Like
Yeah.
time is flying, and before you know it, you know, you may be asking yourself, what did I do with that time? And I'm
Right.
telling you
That's
one thing,
good.
I don't want to I know that I'm building businesses and I'm doing all these things, but I want to also enjoy the process, right?
Absolutely.
Hard
Absolutely.
work is inevitable, it's necessary, but I
Mm-hmm.
also want to make sure that I'm enjoying myself and not have to look back and be like, well, what did I work for? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
Right. Right. Right.
I did
Right.
all of that, and what did I enjoy?
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely.
you have just been extremely amazing, and you've already given us so many great tips on what to
Mm-hmm.
do to manage trauma. Obviously, step number one, recognize that you might be feeling some, or you might have had a traumatic experience. Step number two, go to therapy.
Yeah.
Step
Yeah.
number three,
Absolutely.
implement everything she said tonight. So how have you seen, and it, as I was, emailing you, like some of the things we were talking about, I was thinking to myself, do I even want to talk about the pandemic? Like, I feel
Right,
like even just bringing it up is just re-traumatizing in and of itself.
absolutely.
But how have you noticed with the clients that you work with, what has the impact of the pandemic been on someone who's already dealing with trauma?
Well, it's interesting because one thing that the pandemic did was it put us in survival mode. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
went from up 2 weeks, the governor shutting down, to what? Almost, what is it? Almost 2 years now, and we're still dealing with it.
Yes.
So we went in survival mode. We're like fighting over toilet paper. We're like fighting over wipes and Lysol. And so we really, if you think about just everybody in general, the
Mm,
major stress of what is going to happen, how long is it going to be, am I going to get sick, is someone in my family going to get sick, how's my job going to be affected, am I going to have to switch jobs, am I going to lose my job, is my business
mm,
going to, I mean, it's just so many additional stressors. And then not even to mention, you know, parenting and online learning for their students, their kids. I had to do it with my grandson, and it drove me nuts. I'm like, oh crap, it's 11 o'clock. And I'm like, and I only had to do it like one day. And I was like, oh man, and I'm rushing to get on the Zoom, and we can't get logged in, and what's the password again? And I mean, I just can't imagine, you know, what it would be like to have to do it day in and day out, not to
yeah.
mention having more than one child. So if you're thinking about the stress
Yes.
and the tension and the worry and the fear,
I'm being re-traumatized.
uh,
I'm being re-traumatized.
but you know what? We got through it,
Yes.
and we're getting through it.
Yes. You
We're
know,
getting through it.
so my family, we all had COVID 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow, bless your hearts.
Thank
Sheesh.
God, thank God it was all mild. And by the time we knew we had it, most of our symptoms were gone.
Oh wow.
But the emotional effect, and not even that, not even like my current feeling, right? But it was more, and like I said, think when I tell you it was mild, like clearly I need to go back and read my own book, because I was like, he got my son had a cold, you know, he had a summer cold in July. I'm thinking, here we go, you know, the seasons are changing. You know, I'm like popping Dayquil, vitamins. I'm good.
Right,
I'm gonna
right.
get this work done. I'm gonna see these clients, you know. So I'm like, there were so many thoughts that went through my head, right? And
Right.
one of it was just like all the, you know, coulda, shoulda, wouldas, right? Like everything that could have happened. And not even so much for myself and my husband, because we are vaccinated, which I'm grateful that the symptoms were very mild. But my son, you know, he's only 3 years old. And I just
Oh,
kept
yeah.
thinking, like, that could have been so much worse. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? That could have been, you know what I mean? What could have happened? And you're hearing about, you know, new variants and how it's affecting children. And for me, like, I'm not having, you know, like flashbacks or anything. I will let you know that my anxiety is a bit heightened. You
Yeah.
know, post
Yes.
COVID. You know, the
Yes.
complacency that I had a few weeks ago, I don't have anymore. But you know, I'm not reliving that, but I just think about the emotional effect that it had on me, and how
Mm-hmm.
there are so many people who are walking around with even more hurt, even more emotion, even more,
Absolutely.
you know what I mean, on a daily basis. And it really just um it increased my passion to help people who are hurting,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, during the pandemic, for me, it was really tough for me, and the anxiety that I felt, especially for the first time as providers. We're like, this is the first time we're dealing with the same exact thing at the same exact time, you know what I mean? So that was
Right.
already
Absolutely.
hard to manage my own stuff while trying to encourage and manage others. But
Mm-hmm.
actually experiencing it was kind of like, you know, the the level of empathy that I have now for, clients who may have lost family members to COVID or who've had really bad experiences with it. Like, it really just heightened my, um, just the empathy that I have for my clients, right? And what they're experiencing on top of all the stuff they had on a personal level before the pandemic. And so that's why I really wanted us to talk about trauma today, because there are so many hurting people. And I
Absolutely.
feel like, for a lot of people, COVID kind of outweighed some personal stuff because it kind of pushed some personal things to the back burner. And then for some people, this is a simultaneous juggle, right? Like,
Right, right.
dealing with a global pandemic while also maybe dealing with the people who, have had fires in their home during COVID,
Mhm.
or the recent flooding. Like, how do you recover from that during a time of social distancing, or what I
Right,
mean? Like,
right,
you just
yeah.
really think about all of these additional stressors that people are dealing with in the midst of their everyday trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the thing about it too is some of the big heavy hitters with trauma in general is just that negative thought of, not being good enough, or being unsafe, or not being in control. And when you think about COVID, those two heavy hitters of not being safe and not being in control, if
Wow.
you did have a past traumatic experience, you can imagine how heightened that
Yeah,
was, because we were all kind of running around like chickens. We were all kind of, but if I've already been experiencing that feeling of not being in control, you
wow.
know, especially if I've had like an illness or anything in the past, or
Yeah,
lost someone, in the past, and now here it just heightened everything, you know.
yeah,
And even as a clinician, we're trying to make sure our family's okay, and we're trying to make sure we're okay. But yet we're hearing all of these stories from our clients of their fears and what
yeah,
they're experiencing and what they're dealing with on their job, or what they're dealing with in their families, and just kind of taking all of that in. It was a lot. It was a
yeah,
lot.
yes, a lot.
It was a
A
lot.
lot.
Yes.
Which kind of helps transition us into the self-care piece of this all, right? So,
Hmm.
like, how do you encourage those that you supervise to implement self-care
Hmm.
while we're trying to help everyone else in the global pandemic that we're also in? And also, if you can touch on, you mentioned earlier that trauma and like PTSD was kind of only thought of in veterans, but like maybe someone or family member who is actively helping someone with trauma and PTSD symptoms. So how do we, as providers, caregivers, how do we care for ourselves?
So I think that one of the, like I always say, the biggest thing is kind of check in and recognize kind of what's going on. What are you noticing? Or where are you noticing tension? Another big sign to me is medical stuff, like
Mm,
trouble sleeping. Your blood pressure's up, but there's no reason.
yeah,
Just kind of those stress related physiological responses that we have as well.
yeah,
Eating more, eating less, kind of things. But aside from some of those things, just people acting kind of not their usual selves is a big example of someone that might be being traumatized. Like
yeah,
they would be overly stressed, overly agitated, or frustrated, and that wasn't their normal behavior. Or you notice that they shut down, they've isolated. I know one of the big things I've noticed is isolation.
mm,
Because of COVID, a lot of people have isolated themselves from people. I mean, I remember the first time I walked into Walmart when things were kind of lifted. And I was
mhm,
like, why are all these people here? Like, why are they getting so close to me? Like, what is going on?
yes,
And it can be overwhelming to kind of get
mhm,
reacclimated back into society. And
Yes.
so now, you're out to a game, you're still thinking like, is something going to happen? Is someone going to, and so it's just constantly on your mind, whether it's very conscious or subconsciously, we're kind of always thinking, and that anxiety is always there. So I
Yes.
always say awareness is the key. Being aware of your body, what you're
Mm-hmm.
noticing, what you're feeling, what
Right.
your thoughts are. And then once you are aware, like we were saying before, being very intentional about taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Be very intentional about checking in. Be very intentional about taking breaks.
Mm-hmm.
I have a consultant, and she was like, "But what are you doing after between your sessions?" I'm like, "You mean between my sessions? Like, not really." And she really stressed to me the importance of even between sessions. What are you doing to take care of yourself?
Yes.
And so I'm encouraging my clients. How are you taking breaks? How are you giving yourself that time to debrief, even if it's for a few minutes in the
Yeah.
bathroom, taking some deep breaths or checking
Yeah.
in, slowing things down. Big one, saying no.
Ah, yes.
The boundaries. That's one thing
Yes.
I do appreciate about COVID. I didn't have to be anywhere. No parties. No da 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 da. You go da 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 da.
Yes.
Nobody wanted to go anywhere or wanted to anywhere. You know, just think about that. Like, we're always running. We can't say, no, I have
Mhm.
to go to that party. I have to cash out them and keep it moving. You can't make
Right.
everything.
Yes.
You can't make everything. Sometimes it's just, no, I can't do it.
Right.
It doesn't work for me. I would love to help out maybe the next time, but
Sorry,
I
I'm
just can't
unavailable.
do it this time. And that setting boundaries is such a big one
Yeah.
because we run ourselves ragged and we're exhausted. And we keep going and we keep going until we end up sick or having like a mental break where we're in the bed or we're whatever, and we're thinking, well, what happened? What happened was you didn't give yourself breaks. You didn't slow
Mm.
down. Yes, I'll do this. Yes, I'll be there. Yes, I can do this. And just constantly,
Constant. Mm.
constantly. And
And you
sometimes
know
I'm
what?
like, no, I just can't do
And
it.
you know what? I'm learning. Sometimes I gotta tell myself no. that's
Absolutely.
my newest one. I had to remind myself a couple weeks ago. You're not trying to get to the end goal tomorrow.
Right.
Like
Where's
this
the timeline? It's almost like we're in a race.
in
Yeah, it's almost like we're in a race. Like, why
a
do you have
race
to have
with
it stuff
yourself.
now?
No, like
Right.
this is not going to happen overnight. Calm
Absolutely.
down. It's okay. Do it tomorrow. It's okay. If it doesn't happen this time around, it's
Absolutely.
something for the next quarter. Like I'm reminding myself and having no. No. The answer
Absolutely.
is no to
Right.
you.
Like, sometimes you're right. Sometimes we stretch ourselves so thin. We're just running. We're just running and not doing everything great. It's just like I'm doing a little here,
Child,
and then I'm
spare my
going here, and I'm
life.
gonna do a little bit here to put that band-aid on, and then I'm gonna do a little bit here.
I could have been like an honors dean's list top of the class student if I had put half of the amount of effort into my actual studies as I did
Right,
as being a really great college student.
right,
If I could have been wonderful. But
right.
I was so busy doing everything else that being a great student was kind of just like, I'm a decent student.
Mm-hmm.
But if I had put that same amount of energy into what was most important at the time versus everything else that was not unnecessarily, but shouldn't have held as much weight as it did in my life, then things would have been, I don't know how different, but academically, a lot better.
Well, and then what would you did with it? I mean, I just think that we need to cut ourselves breaks.
Yes.
I was not an A student. I barely graduated. I was like, you know what? I think I might go to college. You know what the heck? I don't really have a plan. And so, but I feel like everything that I went through and everything that I did and my learning experiences helped me to, even my bad choices, helped me to help other people. And so I feel like I'm right where I should be right now in
Absolutely.
this moment. And I think sometimes we don't give ourselves breaks. I think we're always, and social media is a big one. We're always looking at what everybody else is doing. Oh,
The
they're doing this
highlight.
and they're doing that,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's where that race begins. Oh, I should be
Mm.
here, I should be there. You're right where you should be. Give
Yes.
yourself a break. There's nothing wrong with it motivating you, but if you're constantly making you feel bad, or so
Yeah,
that would be another
comparing
self-care
yourself.
thing. Monitor what you take in.
Yes.
Monitor what you take in. And that can be social media. That for me, I can't do too much with scary movies or
Oh,
movies that got me like on edge. Like
no. We deal with
as
too much
for the
real life
NCI
trauma
and
and scary
NSE
movies.
and ABC and Housewives of ATL and all
Listen,
that stuff, like I
it
can't
all
deal with
gives
all
me
that
anxiety.
drama.
Yes. I tell people I deal with real life drama. I watch the same, like, I have recently added like a couple shows, but they're like comedy, like old
Yeah,
school
that's me.
comedy,
I watch
like
Big
I'm
Bang
watching,
Theory and yeah,
yes,
I mean, yes,
yes.
dumb funny. I'm in. I'm on it. But
I
anything
had
where I
to,
got to think and figure
yes,
out who killed who and what,
no.
no, I can't do
Every
that.
now and then, I'll oblige my husband and watch like a new movie. But if it's not a comedy, I'm gonna go in the other room. I'm not watching it. I get absolute
Absolutely.
my anxiety.
But
But he like,
even like the news, like I
oh,
had some of my clients, I had to say, look, stop
sorry.
watching the news. When you feel, if you're looking at social media and it's making you feel some type of way, get out of there.
Get out of
Now,
there.
if you're strolling and you feel good and you can put it down and you feel great, that's something different. But if it's making you worried and more anxious or more depressed, put it down. We have to be very mindful of
Yeah.
what we take in.
I just told
And
someone
I'll
the
tell you
other
a big
day.
one:
Yeah, go ahead.
family. That
Oh,
sister, that mom, that auntie, that cousin that always got something going on, that
yeah,
friend that every time you hang up the phone, you're like, oh my God, well, I wasn't
yeah.
in a good mood. We have to be very mindful of what we take in. We have to be very mindful of what
Listen,
we take in.
we can say the benediction on that one because that was it right there. Yes, that was it right there. I was telling someone before, I was like, I'm gonna have to like unfollow all the news stations because you go to, I'll take a break and go on social media, and that's where I'm reading all the news. I'm like, what's the point of me not watching it if I'm reading it? It's still giving me the same effect. But you're
Yeah,
absolutely right. What we take in, we definitely have to monitor that. I was laughing because my 3-year-old, I've recently started rewatching 227 because
uh-huh.
it's on Amazon Prime, and my 3-year-old knows like the theme song. I was like, ain't no 3-year-old in 2021 knowing these old these
That's
old
funny.
theme songs to all these old shows, like.
Right,
But like those are the kind of things that kind of like put me at ease at the end of the day, because
right.
I know like I don't have to worry about, like a whole bunch of craziness. Like if it doesn't make me laugh or calm me, I tell people we deal with real life drama all day. I
Right,
don't even watch
absolutely.
it.
And we should have a sleep regimen, like you're saying. Like we should have a wind down, like watching a
Yes.
comedy show. I know meditation music, especially for kids, just kind of as we're
Mm-hmm.
winding down our evening, just kind of relax. And I have some
Yeah.
clients that play meditation music in their office.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of we're just kind of relaxing and kind of just a
Yes.
sleep regimen, like a way of doing things to kind of wind down for the day is really important. I have some clients, look, no Google after 9.
No,
Stop Googling
I
stuff.
love that. Yes.
Stop Googling stuff. And then you're laying in bed and you're thinking,
Yes.
she coughed. She's looking on Google. What is coughing? Let's get off and stop Googling stuff.
Yes.
take a break from that as well. So once again, it's really being aware of what affects you.
Yes.
Really paying attention, because sometimes we will be surprised. We hang up that phone or we see that email late at
Mm-hmm.
night and not even realizing the effect that it has on us.
Right. You're so right. You are so right. This has been such an amazing. I cannot wait. I know I have to wait till Friday, but I cannot wait to post this and share this, because this has been so full of knowledge and just
Great,
so much helpful information. I'm just overjoyed by all of this. This has been
great, great.
absolutely wonderful, and I cannot wait to premiere this on Friday. Um,
Great.
you have proven yourself to be the trauma expert, and I'm so appreciative. I'm definitely gonna have to have you back. I'm
Absolutely.
doing six episode seasons, so
Hmm.
you are episode 2 for season 2,
Awesome.
and
Awesome.
next week we are going to be talking about men and mental health, and I'm so excited because I have his name is James Harris out of Virginia, and his business
Awesome.
is um, like he takes the word mental health and he scratches out the ends of it, and his business is Men to Heal. And I
Love
love,
it.
love, love his mission. So I am so excited. So you guys are going to have a great show on Friday. And then 2 weeks from Friday's episode, we will have James Harris. Thank you so much, so,
Sure.
so much for
It was
all
my
that you have
pleasure.
shared.
Keep doing what you're doing. We're
Thank
breaking the
you.
mental health stigmas.
Yes,
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 I love
yes,
it.
yes. Thank you so much. I will
Sure.
talk with you soon. I'm going to just share all the information for the next episode, and I will see you in a second. So thanks
Sounds great.
again. And tell everyone where they can follow you on social media or look up your website and all that information.
Tell them now, you
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
Oh, okay. So my website is www.milestonesconsultants.org, and milestones and consultants both have an S at the end. I'm on social media on Natasha Freshwater Mullen or Milestones. I do both. And
Okay.
Instagram is Milestones. And so I try to post videos and things very similar. I have a drama or trauma panel coming up and some drama or trauma workshops, because I truly believe in educating the community and
Yeah.
other clinicians about how important it is to address our traumatic experiences.
Absolutely. And I think you just recently sent me something. So, since we have a little bit of time before I have to share this, send everything, and I'll make sure that I'll post it all with the episode so everyone can keep in touch with you and to be a part of your panels and your groups and all of that wonderful stuff.
Sounds great. Sounds
All
great.
right. Thank you so much
Thank
again.
you
I
so
really appreciate
much.
you being
Uh-huh.
here. That was absolutely amazing. And I cannot wait for you all to hear. Again, we are consistently raising funds for our free mental health campaign. If you can, nothing is too small or too big to share. We were blessed to donate a few therapy sessions so far, and it's really, I mean, the feedback that we've gotten and the appreciation that we've gotten from those who've received has been truly heartwarming. So if you could help us to continue to help those who are in need, don't forget you can donate at embracingoak.com. Also, check out the books on there. If you purchase a t-shirt, 100% of the proceeds go towards a free mental health campaign. And don't forget to join my sister circle. Here's what we have coming up on our next episode.